the Belize project. So, beginning of the year, maybe? I don't remember exactly the dates. I should have checked on that. But Steve Torgerson was connected with a friend, I think someone who'd supported him, and he got connected to this idea about the Belize project. And so we sent a team. They went down and visited, and then they came back and said, "Yeah, we should do something with these guys. It's not that far away. It gives us a place where we can do short-term missions, and get people to get exposed to what that is, and think about God's purpose in their lives." And so we started to raise money for the Belize project. We raised like $45,000. We've spent so far $28,750. There it is on the slide. We shipped that big container that was full of stuff in July. In August, we had a work trip go down, and the container hadn't arrived yet, but there was some needs down there. There was a house that had burnt down for this family, and so they went down, and we're going to hear more about that, but they went down and helped rebuild this house. And now the container is shipped, and we have another work team scheduled to go next month. They're going to go down there and put up those safety homes and do that. And as well, Pastor Matt and Steve Torgerson, they did a training for some local pastors there, just something called Pathways, how to study the Bible, think about it, and preparing it to present it to the church. And so we did a lot with the Belize project. We raised a lot of funds. You guys gave generously. And we've already sent 2 or 3 teams down there. We're planning to send more. And so I just wanted to invite our Belize folks. If you guys want to come on up, I know I told you we'd come up one at a time. Why don't you just all come up? And that'll make it easy. Just to share, and there's various, the cool thing about this is there's various aspects to this. So Kimberly's going to share from Vacation Bible School kind of perspective, and then Mark's going to share from a work project perspective, and Laura's going to share with Kimberly, and then Matt's going to share about teaching.
Every year at Vacation Bible School, which is, if you're unclear about that, the best week of the year, we look and try to find a mission project that the kids can get excited and be behind. And this year we chose the Belize project because when Torgerson's and that team came back, they talked about a school in Mabilha. And that was something the kids could get excited about and get behind because not only did they take a lot of really cool pictures, but we could tell the story of missions and how we, at 7 or 10, could get behind what God was doing and maybe in the future have an opportunity to go and serve. And so in connection with the GO team, Christy Schmidt, who is the assistant director, and I, we talked to them about what was going on. And Christy did a great job of putting together a little presentation for the kids. And we found out that it was a school, there was a school that was in a very poor part of Belize, about an hour from any store was one of the things we learned. That in this school, there was 8 to 10 kids per grade in kindergarten through 6, and 3 teachers, all who were followers of Jesus. And as we saw some of the pictures of the school, one of the things that really struck most kids was there was a little 3-shelf bookcase, and just a very few number of books. In fact, probably the number of books that most kids are asked to pick up before they go to bed, to clean up their room. And we thought, okay, boys and girls, how can you help bring money in as an offering to buy supplies for this school? And we had kids who got super excited about that. Now, when the budget was put together, they were thinking they'd like to spend about $5,000 down to the school. And I said, we are excited to do this, but our offerings are usually about $1,000 for the week. And so kids were doing all kinds of jobs. We had kids doing bake sales and lemonade stands, and we had kids swatting flies for $0.25 a fly. We had all kinds of ways that we were earning money. And it was super exciting to see the kids come in and put their offering in and get excited about what God was going to do. Well, at the end of the week, we were so excited to find out that the children, 125 kids, and we had about 75 workers through the week, and some of you as well, we raised $5,829. So all the glory goes to God there. Yeah. Super exciting because God not only provided what we needed to be able to buy those things, but enough on top to help with some of the shipping costs. But then the question came in, what supplies do we get and how do we go about doing that? And so Laura is going to talk a little bit about how that came about.
Yeah, when Matt came back from visiting Belize, I was very fascinated by hearing about the school. Just since I've worked in the schools and seen what teachers have and what we work with and things like that. So I got involved because I was walking my dog one day and I ran into Steve and Mary Lee, and they were telling me, we need to spend this budget. We don't have much time. There was a time frame when things needed to be purchased and sent to pack this container. And so they just started talking about needing to buy supplies. They did have a list that the principal Ruth from these schools, she had compiled an entire page of items. So when I worked in the schools, I would purchase the supplies, and I loved doing it because it was somebody else's money, but I wanted to make it go as far as possible. So I love the challenge of that happening. And then the other thing is watching what teachers purchased and watching just what was the best quality, whatever. I loved doing it. So I was able to take that money and I felt like I made it go as far as possible. And then also, at the same time, I had just personally put on my Facebook, because just hearing about that library as well, Matt said he didn't even know it was a library because there was just a couple books there. So I put on Facebook that I was looking for books, and we wanted them to be particular books that were not about American culture. I was just also hoping, too, that there'd be a multi-ethnical look to the books. So I had some family friends with kids that collected books. One fifth grade girl at the time, she did a bake sale, and she gave all her money to purchase some things. I went to 12 Baskets, and I talked to Wes, and I said, do you think I could get some children's books? And he said, you can have as many as you want. And so Lynette Sunblood and I spent 2 or 3 time periods. Lynette went with me, and we just were able to comb through all their storage where they have books, and we were able to find just really nice books about animals and nature, and even just some culturally diverse books as well. And then Ashley Jensen, I was talking to her about it, and she was able to compile some excess donated materials that she had for arts and supplies. I think she put together 6 paper boxes full. And then I don't remember how many boxes we had of books, but maybe it came down to 9. And then one of my connections at the school, they had some brand new readers that they were not going to need, just beautiful little books, and they were able to donate those. So it was very fun. When I purchased the supplies, I divided them by the 3 schools and for each teachers, and was even able to, buy really nice Sharpie colors and just some fun things that teachers and kids have. So it was just really neat to see all that come together like that.
Hello, my name is Mark Perkins, and I took a cue from my brother, Jim Tate. He said he gets older, he writes things down. So do I. I was one of the team members that went to Belize, and I'd like to share some of my experiences with you. And first, I want to give you a little bit of a perspective, then a little bit of history. Then I'm going to tell you a story, and then I'm going to wrap it up with a video. Okay. This trip to Belize began for me probably back in the 90s. I took a Bible study called Experiencing God. And in that Bible study, there's a couple of principles that resonated. The first one is that God's always at work. And the second one gets personal because he says, come join me. Now, we saw a little bit of that. Actually, I think we saw a lot of that in the parking lot. God's at work in the parking lot. And 55 guys, plus all of you, joined in. And that's the whole principle here. So anyway, God invites us to go to work with him. And God, he has a heart for the world. He wrote John 3:16, okay? For God so loved what? The world, right? Yeah. He's got a heart for the world. He's at work around the world. Always has been, always will be. So let's go back 25 years in time, just for a moment. Do you remember cows for Kaluga? For 25 years ago, we as a church could sponsor a cow for $500, and this cow would graze on a rehab center on a farm in Russia, all in support of this rehab center. That's a relationship that is still ongoing today. Remember 2015? The church went to Haiti. They built safety homes. 50 people were involved in that. Now, fast forward to 2025. We went to Belize. God was there. God was working. And God asked us to join him. It's interesting because when God is going to do something, he reveals it to the church, and then he invites his church to come along and join him. So, to join God, what do we have to do? You and I need to leave where we are and go where he is. Now, my story. As Seth said, we were going down to build safety homes initially. The container got wrapped up in customs and in a port. And shortly before we left, we got a new need of somebody's home that burnt down, and we were going to frame up a home for them. So we arrive at the job site. We look at the lay of the land. We look at the tools we have, and we begin to get connected with some of the people that live in this village called London Bridges. And we jump right in. We get going. Now, some of the guys that had experience knew what to do, what order things needed to be done, and began formulating teams. So very quickly, we got organized. We had a key piece of equipment that we needed. We needed it desperately because we had no electricity. So we needed a generator, and we had a generator. It was 25 years old. Hadn't been run in 5 years. Well, we got off to a great start. We were making progress, and we were ahead of schedule, clearly. We were cutting 2x4s. We were cutting 2x6s. We were a machine out there. And then it happened. I was going to ask if anybody could tell me what this is. They would get an all-expense paid vacation for 2 to the location of your choice. You'd have to see Seth after. This is a regulator off of that generator. And the regulator failed. And there was one guy on the team that had the knowledge, had the experience, and could diagnose the problem. It was Gary Fowler. He jumped in there and he said, this is the problem. Course of action, remove the regulator, go to the local hardware store, and seek a replacement. Now, if you know anything about parts, parts have numbers on them, but not in Belize. Not for generators that are 25 years old. So being very spiritually minded, we prayed. And we said, God, this is a God-sized task. We don't know how you're going to solve this at all, but we need your help. So what we did is we had a local contact. His name was Adrian. We gave Adrian this regulator, sent him to the hardware store, and said, find a replacement. Being ambitious, we kept going. We had a chainsaw, and that's what we were using. Now, progress slowed down quite a bit, and we quickly fell behind. But nonetheless, we pressed forward. And then we get the dreaded call from Adrian. It's a negative on the replacement part. However, in this hardware store, there was a man listening to Adrian describe this problem to the clerk. And he invests himself into this problem. He says, I know a shop in a village about 30 miles away from here. They may have a regulator. Adrian calls up the shop, describes this regulator to him, and the shop owner says, yeah, I think I got something like that. It might work. Off Adrian goes to get the regulator. We are at the end of the day. We decide to close up, throw the generator in the back of the van, and take it to where we were staying, because Adrian was going to bring the regulator to where we were staying, and Gary was going to install the regulator. And you remember Paul Harvey? Paul Harvey would say, and the rest of the story is problem solved. Problem solved. Now, I know some of you are wondering, those that travel, how did this get through customs? How did this get through security? You need to ask Gary Fowler that question, okay? But at moments like this, you know God's hands are in the details. You know God is at working because of the solution he provides. And what I want to do is show you a video now. And it was a video at the end of the day. I don't want to tell you all about the video because the video itself will explain itself. We're taking our tools to this house to be stored overnight, and there's this ramp up to the house. Now, I'm at the top of the ramp, okay? So I'm looking down the ramp. I want you to picture this. I'm looking down the ramp. The video that you're about to see is coming up the ramp, okay? I can see the face of the people. Okay, you can't, because the video doesn't show the face of the people, okay? But you can imagine what the face was. You got a stranger, a bunch of strangers in this video paying attention to a child.
Okay, roll it down. It's almost, oh. Stop.
That was it, okay? That mother's eyes lit up because somebody paid attention. Now, who took the video? Gary, of course. And you think this is an advertisement for Gary Fowler? Well, he was my roomie, so anyway. Thank you for listening, but it's a great opportunity to share. Pay attention. God's inviting you to join him somewhere, so join him. Thanks.
Well, as I was reflecting on what I had to share, it's interesting, the story. It actually goes back to the early 2000s when I was first exposed to what's now Pathways. Didn't know it was Pathways then, but I got to know Al Lewis, who actually created Pathways, began to travel overseas and training pastors and lay leaders in proper Bible study methods, especially overseas. It's a real need, especially because a lot of people don't have the opportunity to go to a seminary or go to a Bible college. And so many of them, their preaching needs a lot of work. And so I didn't know. And so then a little over, a year and a half ago or so, actually no, it was a year ago, Seth and I went to a district conference, and they were providing this Pathways training in Jonah. And so he says, hey, let's do this. So we did it. And actually I realized then that, I've done this before, but it was many, many years ago. But then to hear how they're using it, how God is using it, knowing then that Tim Olson with our Medelia Church is a part of it, and he goes to Africa every year to train pastors in Pathways Bible study methods. And so we're sitting there, and then we're like, we should get Randy, who was our trainer there at this conference, we should get him to come to our church. And actually, before he came to our church, we took a group to Sioux Center and did what's called their third one, called The Whole Story. So there's 8 different courses that they provide, and what they try to do is they try to do it in about a 2.5-year time period overseas. So we're getting this training, and then I was asked to be a part of the vision trip to Belize. So I thought, wow, I should probably take some Pathways material with me and see if there be any pastors down there that might be interested in this. And so the first night I brought some curriculum with me, and I showed it to Adrian, who you mentioned his name. He's the Belize project kind of coordinator down there in Belize. Great man. I hope many of you get a chance to meet him. He's just a dear brother. And shared it with him. I said, here, check this out tonight. So he wakes up the next morning and says, Matt, we need this here in Belize. And I said, okay. Well, let me know what we can do. Well, our last place that we visited was with a group of, with some pastors, well, one guy in particular who was overseeing the Presbyterian church, his denomination down there. And he was just talking about the struggle that their church overall in Belize is going through and just some needs that they have. And so I said, Steve and I presented this Pathways training to him, and he says, we need this here. And so he invited us, we coordinated, invited us. And what's nice about this is that we go down, we pay for everything. The only thing that they really do for us is that they provide a meal at lunchtime on the site that we are teaching. And so we foot the bill, you invite the people. And so that week we went down. I went down initially by myself because Steve was already down there, and then Steve and Adrian picked me up at the airport, and then from there, we went north to Corozal to teach these men. And we ended up with 8 men over that week, 4 pastors, 1 and actually 2 probably key elders in their church, and trained them. And it was something that they were really resonating with, really enjoying. And so now part of the process with Pathways is when you leave, you say, you've got to go teach this. You've got to multiply this in your church or in your denomination. And so then if you're doing that, then let's set up another time to come back. And so right now we're in the process of looking at probably January, February. Seth and I are talking about going back this next trip to train them again in the hopes that we can see this, try to get there 2 to 3 times a year so that we can, in 2.5 to 3 years, we could take them through the whole curriculum. But each time we leave them with an assignment that they need to now implement this in their church. So the goal is to train and equip them to be more effective, not only in their Bible study methods, but also in their preaching. And it's just a really neat, I love this, because it's kind of got that discipleship element to it, but it also has that idea of multiplication, is that we could really be equipping pastors there in the area to handle the word more effectively and to really help to equip their church even more so. So it's a real blessing blessing, and it's a real blessing to be a part of a church that is really looking for this, encouraging this, and supporting this. And because, again, it's not just here, it's where we're going. We're seeking to multiply and spread the gospel through our ministry. And so we're just really grateful for that.